welcome to another Face of Advent show. And in today's show, we are going to talk about Byron's 5 top paints and why he loves them.
Yeah, there's going to be loads of surprises in here, guys, honestly.
I've started it on Hold Your Blue just because everyone knows
that Byron loves Hold Your Blue.
All right, I guess let's just roll in then. Balls deep. Okay, Hold Your Blue is the best blue. Done. Next. No.
It's like Keenan and Carl. Byron loves Hold Your Blue.
I do.
a little orange soda.
Absolutely. Well, that's actually a hint to something that didn't make the top 5, the oranges. So, let's start off with the big badass, which is Hold Your Blue. So, Hold Your Blue, if people aren't aware, is made by Scale 75, who make some it's probably fair to say they're fairly techie paints. They don't behave exactly like paints that you'll be used to. I mean, we've all used them, and we've probably all had the first experience where we felt a bit confused.
Well, you shake it for about 20 minutes before you can actually do anything with it.
Yeah,
put like an agitator in it because
it's like trying to medium.
It's like trying to paint with
cement.
And I find
it's like trying to paint with Nutella.
What I find is when you paint, it looks really bright, and then as it dries, it mats out and it looks really dull.
Yeah.
Which can be, but I think the fantasy ones are less matte, aren't they, than the scale colour?
I like the fantasy ones. Yeah,
Huldra is a fantasy one. So if people have used Vallejo have Vallejo model color, which is like their fancy, very expansive artist range. Then they've got Vallejo game color, which is their slightly more vibrant. There's less like German Dunkelgelb 570 for Panzerfaust, that type of color. It's more like wizardy purple, or like glowy green, or
wizard sleeve purple and crimson helmet and
not sure if I've used those ones.
Testicle pink. I mean tentacle pink. That was the one. No, sorry.
Testicle pink.
Yeah, couldn't resist. Sorry.
Bleach bone. So their fantasy and games color range is pretty vibrant, and in the bottle, Huldra doesn't look anything special whatsoever. And then, generally speaking, a lot of like the turbo vibrant, kind of the saturated paints, and by that I mean really colourful. Like
what do we call them, Byron? What's our special term for them?
They're pigment sluts. So they want to give out their pigment and share it with the world super readily. They dilute beautifully, and you'll know what these paints are because they're the ones that you might have used before. You'll have had this with GW paints or whatever. Some paints you wash in your water cup, and then your water cup just goes and it's blue, and that is what happens with Hold Your Blue. So the reason I love it so much is it's super vibrant. You can put it in shadows amazingly. It mixes well with others. It doesn't have some of the negative attributes of the normal scale colors, and you can just add it to anything. So I could just start listing the things I use it for. I use it for base coats. I use it for making washes for going over metallics to make my steels kind of bluey. I use it for gems in the deep bits. And then because it is so vibrant, you can just add white to it and just carry on going, not involve another color whatsoever. And you get the entire full spectrum from like deep, deep, deep evil blue to like super bright crisp blue. So
it's good for tattoos as well, isn't it?
Very good point. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing for many, many, many things. So Hold Your Blue is where we're starting. Very surprisingly, it is the bomb, though. I'd recommend anyone gets it. You don't have to do anything different with it. You don't have to do anything special. It is just a paint. It's just an incredibly good paint. So you don't have to, like get new dilution techniques or anything. It's just strong AF, and that's what you need to be aware of. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. So you've got a red. I don't know which red it is. I'm guessing it might be Mephiston, but
no.
Okay.
No, I haven't. So I've picked I tried to be interesting. Mephiston is amazing, although it's recently been superseded by another red that is like
Gorvar Barak, or whatever it's called.
No, this is Word Bearer's red, which is basically it's not a Byron color. You wouldn't think it's not stupidly bright or anything like that, but it can do everything. So
it's
Word Bearer's red,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it can be used for leather. If you add bone to it, you can do Caucasian skin amazingly well. And you can literally just kind of like you can go from Hold Your Blue to white. You can go from Word Bearer's red to Screaming Skull, just all the way. And that will do all of the tones you need for flash. You can use it for bone with a couple of washes over it. It looks amazing as leather. And the addition of bone is a really special thing with it. Adding that to it, you get this kind of very, very... It just looks like it's something that was alive, basically. There's some interest kind of within the colour. Behaves completely normally, good coverage. that's it. I mean, it is a very nuts and bolts paint, and it's not one that I imagine would jump out as people as exciting.
It's quite a new
I
one.
use
It's one of those ones that, yeah, I was gonna say it's one of the ones that came out in that sort of like that when they did the transition where the Forge World heresy paints turned over, didn't they? I think that's probably what it is. It's like word bearers painting. It was in that sort of like that spell. Like, I know like Barrack and Burgundy came out at the same time, and like that's another one of my like. It didn't make my list, but it's one of the it should do because I really like Barrack and Burgundy.
Yeah,
it's
use it for basing. You can use it for
I was going
like
to say I
wood,
used it on Mars
anything.
basing from the kind of fixes that I had to do. It was really good.
Yes, it's an awesome color. So it's there not because it's crazy amazing at any in particular thing. It can just do a bit of everything, and it's really, really useful. It's a nice way to just introduce a bit of warmth too. So that is why Wordbearer's Red is in there. It is amazing. If you add orange to it, you get some really interesting, nice, warm, leathery colors as well.
It's good for lava as well. If you start adding orange in and stuff.
Ah, nice. Yeah, I consider that. Adding black to it as well is really, really interesting for leather too. What have we got next?
Well, you've got your shameless plug, your how to paint gold video, but
well,
I guess it's fine.
So there is a reason that I've included this shameless plug, and that is because the next paint, which is very unsurprising for anyone, which is in kind of I've got a little section of my paints behind.
Scorex bronze that dries up in like 10 minutes. No.
Oh, shut up, you naughty boy!
Sorry,
no,
in a cheeky mood.
This comes from my heavily used shelf, as do all of these paints, and this is Retributor armor, and it is the best, most user-friendly, flexible gold I have ever used from anyone, which is a fairly big statement to make, I guess, but it's just brilliant.
I mean, you even like just sort of like jumping in there. Like I've been using Retributor for a long time, and I was getting really frustrated because I always used to use Liberator to highlight it, and I found it very, very frustrating because Liberator would either be too runny or you'd never get a consistent actual color with it when you shake it. And Byron, you said to me like, "Why are you even bothering? Just get Retributor and mix it with silver and just do like." So I bought a pot of Retributor gold, and I bought a Valio aluminium, which spoilers, and I just 50-50'd it, and that's now my Retributor highlight. And I've just got like a little pot that is just, I mean, I won't lean behind the computer and get it, but it's just like behind me over here. Like in my, I've got like a selection of like my go-tos that I've pre-mixed.
I think Liberator is a bit weird because like it's a different tone to Retributor, so it doesn't quite look right when you put it over the top.
I would agree with that.
Weird. And also it separates really easily. So Retributor really good, Liberator not so much.
Yeah, Retributor is incredible.
It's a shame because I like Liberator as a color.
I like the color really nice. But
I know the heavy metal team mix it with 20% dryad bark.
That's a segue to what I'm about to say. So Retributor, if you want to, I'm not sure if people are aware of this, but basically if you want your gold to go down nicely, you put it over brown. Or you put a little bit of brown in it, as Les has just mentioned. Now, that's the wide way to look at it. But then, depending on the brown that you pick, you can get your gold to do a lot of different things. So if you mix your Retributor with Doom Bull, you'll get these and Doom Bull and Retributor are just made to hold hands for forever. Like they are a perfect combination. Basically, one is kind of like the metallic yellowy version of the other. And you can put one under the other. You can put them in any order you like. You can glaze Retributor with it, that type of thing. But mixed probably about 50-50 as a base coat and then adding your Retributor is a fantastic way to have your whatever part of your model you're painting get more shiny as you transition through. So I always talk about contrast whenever I'm talking about painting. You can get contrast in terms of how metallic your metallics are. And if right at the edges, they're super shiny, which is where they'd be scratched and stuff. And in the recesses, they're a little bit more drab, which is more realistic. It's where it wouldn't get brushed off. They wouldn't get abused or scraped or battle worn or anything like that. It's pretty realistic. And then you get this, not only transition of that bit's darker, that bit's lighter, but also that bit's darker and not as shiny. And that bit is brighter and incredibly or 100% shiny. So Doom Ball goes with it amazingly well. Scrag Brown, if you want like a really warm orangey gold, that's a bit of a left field one, but that's also phenomenal. And then the other thing to note about this one is just mixing it with any color ever. Was it Lupercal Green? Is that what it was called, Les? We were talking about it just before. Lupercal Green in this makes some kind of deep sea, weird, perfect for deepkin, that type of vibe. Tinted gold, which is out of this world. It's absolutely brilliant.
I
And then
quite
for your
often use greens on my golds when I'm doing like blighted or aged. Or I won't even want to do bronze. I use gold with green on it rather than actually bronze.
yeah,
But I see it's interesting you said about taking it up to more metallic on the edges, because when I did my warriors, I wanted them to look cold. So I actually, in the recesses, I had this greeny colour. Then I went into like the metallic, and on the edges, I actually mixed in frostbite to make the edges look really bright, but not metallics, almost dulled,
not shiny.
because the cold would almost like, do you know when you look at a metal in the
Yeah,
cold and it almost takes all the shine off of it
like
because
mist it up, kind
it's
of.
almost like frosting on the edges.
Like on
Yeah,
a car in the morning, a silver
Yeah,
car, and it's got the
yeah.
yeah. So it is sort of it's playing around with that concept, but it's very. I think mixing non-metallic paint to metallics is a really underused thing, which
Oh,
makes them
completely.
so, especially when you're recess shading.
It's a
So,
cheat as well. It's
yeah.
an efficient cheat.
one of the things that I saw Max Fillet do with his, I don't know if you remember his Dark Oath Chieftain that won the heavy metal thing. His, if you look at the sword, the metallics are so nice. And what he did with his is that he used a tiny spot of white in the final highlights, and then on the edges of the silver, he spotted it with white, because then
Oh,
it
wow.
just pings. And I'm like, I would never have thought of spotting it like that.
Ballsy.
Yeah, and it just, and when he said it, I was like,
All right.
I mean, you fair play. I mean, I'd never consider using it. Obviously, there's a reason Max Flay's like a really good painter, right? But it's it's not the sort of thing that I do, and I don't think it would apply to any of the army painting stuff that we do. But it's one of those things. If you wanted to have like that super like GW pointerless like heavy metal style where they just touch the corners and you've got metal and you touch it with like a really pure white, then it's going to make that look, that highlight like pop even more.
Interesting one. Just mixing it in general, as Russ said, it's underused and it's really, really valuable. Both of the metallics, well, I'll come to one, but the metallics I'm talking about, they dry brush beautifully as well, which is a genuine consideration for me. Like, I'm not going to use something that is going to get bitty or claggy or dry out too much. And Retributor will dry brush for days amazingly. Like, you also pretty much get one coat coverage if you smush it, which is basically a heavy dry brush. And there is not a more efficient way to base coat. It's arguably more efficient than airbrushing even, because there's no mixing time. You just take it and blob it on your thing. A little bit of brown in there and that gold, and you can undercoat an entire model in a couple of minutes.
I've recently been using probably a segue onto your silver, I guess. Vallejo Model Air or Game Air silvers. I've been using chrome, and to get gold, I've just been putting a snakebite contrast over the top of it.
Oh yeah,
because
absolutely.
It's just like it does the same thing, but rather than trying to use the gold, because it's a little bit more yellow than Retributor. So rather than trying to get that effect with Retributor, I'm just like, I'm not going to use Liberated Gold. I'll use Vallejo Silver with contrast over the top of it.
Absolutely, you can use Cassandora Yellow for the same effect. Works really, really well. Like very, very nicely.
So
what's next, Russ?
Game Air Silver I've got up. So
unsurprisingly, so often holding hands in my paint jobs are these two. Let's just already covered it with chrome, I think, which is pretty similar to this aluminium. Really, I mean, basically everything nice is said about Retributor, you could say it about this, but this one is dangerously good for coverage. Like, this is the type of paint where I am still surprised, like 3 years in, as using it as my primary silver, just how well it base coats anything in one coat flawlessly.
And that's probably still the same one that you bought 3 years ago, because it seems to go on forever. It just seems like you use it for everything, but it goes on forever. It's just
Just to be clear with people watching this, we don't use this. We're not talking about this as an airbrush paint. We're talking this with a brush, because although it's an air paint, the metallic flecks are a lot finer and it's already pre-thinned, but you don't lose any of the coverage because of the density of the pigment in there, and that's why it's a really good colour, because you literally don't need to thin it straight out the pot, and then the coverage is fantastic.
Oh, it's nuts. It's great for scratches as well because there's so much pigment in there. You can thin it quite a lot, and you'll still have a fairly powerful punchy paint. So if you want to do little scratches or kind of do some glazes or anything like that, I mean, I've picked a paint which it's got all the same attributes as Huldra Blue, but in a metallic, so you can dilute it for days. It'll be fine. Out the pot, it's pretty nuts anyway. Plays well, really well with others, and as Russ has covered, you can glaze over the top of it and turn it gold. You can mix some browns in with it. People should definitely consider dropping colors in with both of these metallics and just seeing what happens. Drop a purple in there, you'll get an amazing color, like really, really, really good. I mean, it's a very Ron-Seal paint. Like, it is the best covering silver I've used. Doesn't muck you about. Make sure you clean your brush as well, because the pigments get everywhere, like everywhere. It just wants to be covering shit for days. That's all it does.
Never leave it in your brush for too long. I've ruined a brush by not cleaning it properly, and the pigment is so much that it just goes solid after the fact. So just make sure you clean your brush. It's brush care is a thing, right? If you want a brush to last, look after it.
If you're dry brushing with it, it never, ever, 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 ever needs to be going past like 2/3 from the tip. A lot of people say with normal paintbrushes you should not be going all the way to the metal, but it should never be wet enough so it can kind of capillary action its way into the ferrule metal bit, and top 2/3, like that's why the dry brushes with metallics get to last forever, whereas normal brushes get abused, because normal brushes, the water takes the paint into the body of the brush, and that can do some nasty things to it.
Okay, so and your last one.
Oh, this is a good one.
It's a new one, isn't it?
It is.
I think discovery.
If we all tried this one,
it's the best. It's the best one of these. I don't use any other. I threw out all my other whites. It's just the best white. I used to use the Fantasy Purity white, and I've still got it. And that was this one, but like
that's what I use at the moment, because I've got so much of it. I'm just like, well, I just keep using that.
It's just that white is just perfect.
So this is Monument, isn't it? Monument.
We're talking about old titanium white from Monument Hobbies. I mean,
Pro Acryl, isn't it? The range.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely phenomenal. It just does what you always wanted white to do. Like, best way to describe it. All those times you've been frustrated because your white went white, it will white, and it'll do it amazingly. Dilutes really well. Top tip
airbrushes nicely.
Oh god, gorgeously, yeah. Top tip for this and whites in general: if you have a normal white, so I'm not going to talk about Corax, it's light grey, but white Scar or Scale 75's white or something like that, you can use that white and then step to this as like your ultimate, and you will get a highlight of your white, which is really useful because it's very easy to kind of run out of ways to make things look brighter. So if you want to dot white on the end of anything, this is great. But this is it's just a really well behaving paint. It's changed how painting white feels for me, so that is why it's in the list.
Yeah, I think every single white army I ever do now will be sprayed Grey Seer, because you get a perfect coverage as opposed to the roller dice with the GW Corax white rattle can, and then I'll just airbrush that over the top of it, or I'll airbrush Corax, the actual GW paint, and then have the transition of that over the top, so then you've got like a zenithal.
You can definitely dry brush over it as well. Use Grey Seer or something like that, and then dry brush the white over, and then hit it with contrast. That's unlocking some stuff that is
apocryphy white. And then silicon grey in the recesses if you want to.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. That's your top 5 paints. So you can pick those up from Element Games. Follow the link in the description to help us out, and like and subscribe and do the algorithm. Thanks for watching, and we're back tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Catch you in a bit.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.